Bear hug number 21. Today, our friend Cubby Bear felt scared. Do you remember what made him so afraid? He was afraid of the tractor, right? I'm sure you guys have some things that make you feel afraid. One time, God's people, the Israelites, felt afraid of a very big enemy. They forgot that God is in charge. They forgot God's promise that if the Israelites obeyed and trusted in Him, He would help them win against all their enemies. Young David would help them remember to trust God. Here is a true story from God's Word. Remember that all the stories in the Bible really happened. You can believe them. One day, David's father Jesse said, "David, take these 10 loaves of bread and these 10 cheeses and hurry to visit your brothers in the army. Find out for me how they are doing. I hope they are well." Early the next morning, David left his sheep with another shepherd, packed the food, and set off to see his 3 oldest brothers who were fighting in the Israelite army. When David arrived at the army camp, the Israelites were lining up to meet their enemy. The Israelites stood on one hill, and their enemy, the Philistines, stood on a hill across from them. David left his pack of food with a guard and ran to see his brothers on the hill. As David talked with his brothers, an angry voice boomed, "Israel, let's see how strong you are. Send a man to fight me." The giant voice came from a giant man. His name was Goliath. He was a Philistine, and the Philistines were enemies of God and God's people. Goliath stood over 9 feet tall. When the Israelites saw Goliath, they all ran away terrified. They forgot that God was in charge. They forgot to trust their mighty God and King, who saved them from their enemies. But David did not forget. Who does this Philistine think he is? Does he really think he can beat the armies of the living God? "I will fight Goliath, and God will help me," David told the Israelites and King Saul. "Oh, you're too young," said King Saul. "You don't know how to fight." "I take care of my father's sheep. God helps me kill the bears and lions that attack the sheep. He will help me kill Goliath." Cubbies, do you think that the little shepherd boy David will win against Goliath? David played the harp and liked to write songs. Listen to these words from one of his songs. "In God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can man do to me?" That's from Psalm 56, verse 11. David knew that God was stronger than any man, even a giant. David also believed God would fight for Israel as he promised. When Goliath saw David, he was mad. He couldn't believe the Israelites would send such a young boy to fight him. Goliath said mean words to make fun of David. David said to the Philistines, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." Then David ran closer, and he reached into his pouch. He pulled out a stone and whirled it in his sling. Swish! He let the stone fly, and it thumped Goliath right in the forehead. That angry giant fell face first into the dirt. Hooray! The Israelites hooted and hollered. They chased the rest of the Philistines and won the fight. Finally, they remembered God is in charge. Many years later, David became king because of his trust in God. Cubbies, let's say David's verse again together. Psalm 56, verse 11. "In God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can man do to me?" These days, God doesn't promise to fight all our enemies like he did for Israel. Instead, Jesus tells us to love our enemies and to pray for those who hurt us. But God does promise that He is with us at all times. This is a promise that God gives us in the Bible. When you feel afraid, you can remember this promise and other promises from the Bible. Do you know any other promises from the Bible?